Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to this live stream where we are going to talk about going through transitional periods in our life and what does this mean and how to navigate these moments in our life where we are feeling a little bit out of place, but at the same time we know where we are. And then this can be confusing at times. I have some notes here next to me. This is my first live, so this is also going to be me dipping my toes in the water and seeing how this feels and hopefully trying to establish a communication and creating a safe space for us to just how do you say to just establish some bonding at the moment over a theme that I think, this is my point of view, that it is interesting in nowadays, and I think that it can be interesting not only for me but for more people around. And what do I mean with transitional periods in our life? There is a lot of moments. I can give some examples. For example, imagine a moment in your life where you were studying something and you're going through that transitional period where you went from being a student to being someone who is going to practice everything you studied and to go and get active in whatever it is that you've been studying. And sometimes changing jobs can be a really big transitional period. Or even, for example, for myself, I would say going from a person who works a 9 to 5 to a person who is following her purpose, establishing her own business. That is a really big period of transition in your life because everything that we were used to do until that point, it taught us a lot of lessons. But from that moment on, it's going to be a lot different because you are going to have to adapt to this new period. And obviously you are going to have questions in your head like, am I still the same person? Am I changing? If I am changing, because sometimes we feel immediately changes in ourselves, what does this mean? And am I going to be able to remain my same person? And what I would like to say is that even in periods of transition, we do remain ourselves, but it can feel at that moment that we kind of lose ourselves in all of the noise and the circumstances. But periods of transition in your life can be also something very simple as, I don't know, let me think of something really simple that sometimes can mess up with our heads really bad. Like for example, when we move homes. It's only sometimes it's something that you really wanted, and you just moved from one environment to the other, and that can bring you some kind of anxiety, a little bit of even grief from the old situation, because it's always good also to go through all the moments that it brings to us, this transition. And sometimes it can be really big stuff, like imagine that you followed a career in your life, and let's say for 10 years, and then suddenly after all of those years you discover that this is not really what I want to be doing right now. Because it's normal. It's normal to grow as we age, as we go through life and we meet new people and we go through experiences. We grow and we change. And change doesn't mean changing who you are in your core, but you change your person. Like, you don't change maybe the values in your core, but you change the way you view the world and the way you deal with certain things. And doing that sometimes can be confusing in the period of the change. But imagine, and in that moment that you realize that, okay, I am not this person, and I am more like this and that. And then you will want to choose differently. And that can bring a really big amalgamous of things. Like, for example, confusion is one of the big ones. The first things that you will feel is very confused, like what I said about asking yourself, am I still the same person? Am I still going to be able to act the same way? Am I changing? Are this change is going to affect the relationships in my life? And then there is grief. Even when change is positive, there is this period of grieving the person we were, and that is now evolving, grieving maybe situations that we had and that we don't belong anymore, relationships that maybe we had to leave behind. And doing that, finding a place to grieve who we were and the situation and everything is very important, is a very important phase. And it's important that we give ourselves time to feel that. And then there is anxiety, there is fatigue, there is loss of motivation. Those are, let's say, the main symptoms, because our mind is in constant movement at that moment, because we are feeling discomfort, because something needs to change and we just don't know what is going to happen. It's about the unknown, right? And the unknown may be exciting, but it's also very daunting, because we look at it and we think, oh, who am I going to be after I go through this period? And then you also have identity shifts in this period of transition. It's the who I am now, that first question I said, and that feeling of, am I still the same person, can be a little bit uh, discomfortable at the time. And this is just, how should I put it, is a shedding phase, a liminal space, just like, almost like a rebirth corridor, that you are walking through, going through all of this, little phases, opening different doors, seeing yourself different ways. And, you know, I would say that the common reasons, and I'm looking a little bit to my notes here next to me, common reasons why we normally feel like transitions are heavy for us is like, our nervous systems, they crave certainty, and transitions, they are uncertain by nature, right? Because, like I just said, we are looking towards the future, towards the uncertainty of something new in our life, even if it's the most amazing thing, something that we have been wanting for so long. Like, for example, one of the examples I used in the beginning, that was like, imagine you've been studying for a few years something that you really love, and it's like your dream career and you really want to go for it. And then that period where you're going from the student to the actual expert who is going to be practicing everything you study, it's like everything is new. So everything is new. Although it's exciting, it's also confusing for our nervous system. And that's what times also provokes that anxiety, that fatigue, because we love what we are doing, but we are also facing the unknown. And then we often try to rush the clarity instead of give ourselves the time, because we go in that excitement, of the moment, and instead of giving ourselves time, to just, and then let things emerge and happen, we want to do everything, because obviously there is a lot to be done. At least that's what we think, that everything is going to change, and now what am I going to do about it? And it can be a bit stressful. And then we have this part that normally happens in this transitional moments in our life, that is, we tend to compare ourselves with people who are ahead in the situation, or to look how they did, how they walked the path until reaching where we think we are going to be. And that, I mean, although sometimes it can be very nice to see, to take some examples, and to, if we use this, you know from the positive point of view of like, oh, let me just see how you did this and maybe I can get some tips, that's really good. And I'm not saying don't do that, but the mistake that sometimes we go into is when we compare ourselves to people who are ahead of us, because people who are ahead, we tend to see the finished product, right? We tend to see where they are now, what they reach and what they conquered, but we don't see all of these periods that they went through, also the confusion, the anxiety, the moments where they ask themselves, am I still able to do this? Am I still the same person? Is this change going to affect me? And the days where they couldn't even get out of their bed because their head was going 100 kilometers per hour and with ideas, and they just couldn't move, right? So we don't see those faces, and by comparison, comparing ourselves that are in this transition period, not yet there, we are going to put a lot of stress on our shoulders because it's hard. We're going to put even more stress in our nervous systems. And then, yeah, and then obviously what happens is that we get even more stressed, and this is overwhelming for our nervous system most of the times. And then there is another point, that is when old coping mechanisms, they stop working, right? Because every period of transition brings with itself a little bit of change, and change is good because something that is unchangeable, I think about a statue. Even a statue changes, right, with weather and everything, even if it's outside, of course, but if it's not, it won't change. But if it doesn't change, do you want to be like a statue, like constantly the same thing? No, I don't think that. As human beings, we crave change. it's it's a something we can do. It's an ability almost that we have. We are able to change, we are able to evolve, so this is really good. But when we change, obviously old coping mechanisms and things that we used to do, they don't work the same way anymore. And when this happens, this brings stress with it. And for example, well, I'm here talking, but I think it's even more important to give an example from my own life, something I'm going through right now. And this is also one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this in particular, the transition. For example, for me personally, just what's happening right now is that I am in the middle of this. I am now uh I am pregnant, and I am about to be a mama. I'm still not halfway my pregnancy, but I last year I discovered I was pregnant, and right now I'm in the middle of this process of going from just me to me, the mother. And for me personally, it's not about the fact that I am pregnant. Obviously, this will be a transition and a period of a lot of stress, to even if it's positive stress, but stress to a lot of families, right? To a lot of women, to a lot of people who are pregnant. Not only because what happens with you physically, because obviously there is a lot of changes in your body, a lot of changes in many levels of your body, but there is also, for me personally, this point of the person I've developed until I discovered I was pregnant, right? I went through a lot in this last few years, to also a lot of transitions from, for example, discovering that I was living a life based on a person, on that was more of a mask that I was using. And then from the moment where I discovered that, I started this beautiful healing period. There were a lot of traumas that came up to be looked at. I had therapy. I started my spiritual development. And when I say that, they go beautifully together, because for me personally, there's not really a big separation between spirituality and us mentally as a person, you know. I think that do being in therapy also helps us developing spiritually, because we are helping our nervous system and our bodies to be more aware of our spirit, to be more aware of our own personality, of our who we truly are behind the mask. And by unraveling that, we are also becoming more of who we are. Therefore, in this spiritual way of talking, we are connecting even more to our essence. So for me, there's not really a big separation, but I digress a little bit here. And this is also a theme that is very, very close and dear to my heart. But maybe we will talk about this in another stream. For now, talking about that, and that period of transition in my life was so deep, so important, and I became a person that is even closer to who I truly am. But that made me discover that everything that I was living until that moment was not really who I truly was. So everything changed. My personal ambitions, my professional ambitions, and uh, yeah, and a lot of other things changed. And I think you can understand me, right? What it means to go through periods where you think, okay, I built a lot on this base, but this base is not really good, so I have to restart. So I had to restart, and that this period of my life was so mm, so powerful, and there was a lot of healing, there was a lot of growing, and there was a lot of self-love and inner knowing. And then suddenly I became who I am today. And then suddenly all of that um, got kind of, how should I put this? It's like I discovered that I'm pregnant, and it's like, can I still be this person that I am building until now? Or is this also going to change my life in every single aspect? Can I still mm, look ahead the same way, you know? And or do I have to change my purpose? Do I have to change the way I deal with things right now? It's also is me changing from just me, you know, doing things for myself, growing for myself, to me pregnant, to me becoming a future a mother, still growing, still evolving. But the growing and evolving, is it going to be the same now? It's like, you know, all of these questions, and I'm going, am I going to be able to be the same person and a mom at the same time? Is motherhood gonna change me? um am I gonna lose my individuality? You know, this is something that, because in the past I was a people pleaser, and for a long time I wasn't really true to my own personality. I was so scared of show up in my individuality and who I really was. And now, obviously, the first thing that came to me was like, am I still going to be able to respect and honor that individuality, you know? And I don't know, not losing that, not losing the personal and spiritual growth until now, but then just transforming into someone who is more, who is um, who is part of a even deeper relationship without losing themselves, you know. And all of this, obviously, it just almost put me into it was almost like I felt my system, you know, that was, I found a rhythm for myself, how I was doing things. And um, I found tools and ways of being myself and feeling better when I was feeling a bit out of balance and all those things. And suddenly there was this new being in my life, and there was, this became a big transitional period for me. And it's also got me thinking, about this, about, wow, this is, I thought that I went through a big transition in my life when I thought, oh, I've been living a lie and I want to live more truly to who I really am. But first, I have to find who I really am. And then I find who I really am and what I really want. And I start finding out more healed versions of myself. Like in this period before, I also found ways of working with my inner child that felt unsafe and feeling more safe. And and then suddenly I was like, okay, is it going to work the same way? I don't know. And obviously all of this put me into this stasis, almost like, of, okay, so now I hit the pause button because I need to reassess. I need to know, you know am I still the same person? Am I still going to be able to do the same things? Are all of these tools and things that I've been using until now going to still work? And by me being the way that I've been until today, am I still going to be able to be good enough for this child? All of that, it's just big, just made this big, like, storm in my mind. And for a moment, I felt so overwhelmed and so anxious that I couldn't move. And I couldn't do, all the rhythm that I found and doing things the way I did. It was almost like it wasn't working anymore. The ways that I was doing things until that moment, they weren't working anymore, because now there was a new thing happening in my life, and I just didn't know what that really meant. Yeah, I think this is basically also what made me want to talk about this. Mm, sorry, a dry, a dry throat. But yeah, I mean, you know, I found out that transitions, they kind of activate our survival systems then. And even when the change is aligned, because I forgot to mention, but I'm really happy. I'm really happy with what's happening. And but it's obviously, I'm really happy that that this is an experience that I'm going to be able to go through, and that is happening now in my life and not in another moment. But I think it's totally normal that everything in life, that this transitional, to bring us this period, and bring us this confusion and this anxiety. And even if it's something amazing, transitions don't all have to be negative. They can also be very positive, like this, for example. I think that becoming a mom is a very, very positive thing. It's beautiful. I mean, there is another human being that chose me to be their guide, to be their their companion in this joyful journey, and in being, yeah, in being here with us in on earth. So I feel very, very honored also, in a way. But it's also triggered, because it's a transition, and I would like to talk about this too. It also triggered some other layers of things that needed to be worked on me. Like, for example, until this period, I have worked on my traumas, obviously, and also in, and traumas don't all have to be big T's, right? Sometimes traumas are just moments in our life where we felt like we didn't, or we didn't receive what we needed, and therefore we created, and our brain created ways of protecting us, or we didn't get enough love, or we didn't something really necessary. Like, most of the times, like, for example, when we are children and we search for the love of our parents, this is just an example, right? And at that moment we didn't get it because maybe they were busy or maybe they were dealing with something. And obviously we didn't know, and at that moment we thought, okay, so maybe it's my fault, maybe there's something I should be doing that I'm not doing, or maybe sometimes we develop those things, I'm not good enough or something like that. And those are small moments in our existence where we create those little points. There are like trigger points every time we go through the same thing or something similar or an experience that triggers that point in our brain. There comes that feeling and the that automatic way of dealing with it, right? So for me in my journey until now, there were a lot of, like I said, I had a tendency to people please, right? To maintain everyone around me happy. And for me, maintaining everybody around me happy was the less I was myself, because I grew up listening that I was too much, that I talked too much, or that why are you so busy, for example. And every time that I was more myself, I talked more, I made more questions, I was maybe too energetic or something like that. And I would like, oh my god, if I am like this, people are going to be less happy. And then I started thinking, okay, I have to change myself in order to make people around me happy. And so I developed this thing, like I wanted to protect people from myself. And obviously that is multidimensional. There is a lot of dimensions to this and to growing up like that. And there was a given time where I became aware of this, and hypnotherapy helped me a lot with this. And uh, inner child work was beautiful, with working with self-worth, or when sometimes we are afraid of being ourselves. And there are little moments in our life that our brain then kind of blocks to protect us. And by doing all of this kind of therapy and parts work too, like where I discovered layers of this trauma, let's call it this way. And for me, I thought that a lot of this was worked on, solved, and then I came to this beautiful moment in my life where uh, I am giving my body to create a new life. And then in a certain way, this triggered a different layer of this, because there was a moment where I almost, I am a person, I meditate, I do energy work, so I work with energy and I'm very sensitive to energies. And one of the most beautiful things that I like to do when I'm meditating is send my energy everywhere in my body. And there was a moment where I was even afraid to send my energy from my heart down, because I was afraid that will that do something to this new life, and I didn't even understand what I was doing, but I was trying to protect this child from myself, when at the same time I'm trying to connect with this new being. I'm at the same time trying to protect this new being for me, from me myself, from who I am, because I don't send my energy there in fear that that is going to hurt their experience, sometimes hinder their experience. Because I remember that when I was working on a lot of trauma, a lot of my trauma was on my lower chakras, on my sacral chakra. I had a lot of um, energy blocks there. And then, of course, I did a lot of beautiful work around that. But then I saw myself being scared, because it's like, what if me sending energy there is going to open up some kind of door, and this new life inside of me is going to feel any kind of pain that it doesn't belong to them, and then they're going to think that they have to protect me. And I don't want that. I want them to have their own experience, and I want them to have happiness and to be able to develop. I was also underestimating this child, but at the same time, it was just, for me, this was messing up with my nervous system, right? It was making me feel unsure, was making me feel, and was triggering this other layer of this me trying to protect people that were dear to me from myself. And until I became aware of that, I was feeling also a hard time kind of connecting with myself and with my baby, because I was blocking my energy from reaching my power centers, my creation centers, my essence, my physical survival energy points, right? So things that are vital for us, where your identity, part a big part of our identity resides, I was blocking myself, so I wasn't allowing myself to be the full of me. And that kind of also hindered me into my creativity, into working. And I was like, why am I not able to do the things that I like to do? It's like I still have ideas, but why can I not, for example, create content the same way? Or because I was overwhelmed with this transitional period and not kind of giving myself, like I said, I was trying to rush the clarity instead of feeling what I was feeling, into going deep in my body and trying to understand it. I was just staying in my mind and like, what is happening, instead of letting things come. And in this period, I had help. I searched for help because I think it's very important in periods of transition. And this is the next thing that I want to talk about, how to go through it, and to also, yeah, one of the things that helps is to not go through it alone. And when I say this, is sometimes we have family members who can help us, sometimes we have friends, and sometimes we need other kind of help, like a coach, or just a colleague, a person that will look at the situation with the less partiality, for example, with a more curious outlook, instead of having that emotional connection to us. And having that is a really good way of going through these periods, to have someone to talk about it, a person, not ChatGPT. Because sometimes in these periods we also have all of these questions, and then we go and look on the internet. Is this what I'm feeling? And then we come, we see things that sometimes makes us more, even more confused. Oh, this is that. No, just talk with someone, a human being who can actually be present and create a safe space for us to just say, I am feeling confused. And it's not that I'm not happy, or is because I'm not happy, whatever you have to say, because everything we feel in these periods of transition is relevant. Sometimes we think, oh no, this is not important. Everything that you feel in this period is relevant and extremely important, because it can be the clue for you to find out the best way to deal with the situation. So then I would like to talk about reframe transitions as initiations, because a transition is not a pause. Or because I felt, like I said, I felt like I was in a period of pause, but it is not really a pause, because you are actively integrating. We are integrating every single detail of the person we were and the new things that are coming into our life. We are integrating those new things with the person we were until that. And from there, it's going to merge with us, and we're going to emerge as the person we are building and growing into. as I said, we change in a beautiful way, because you maybe not change your core personality, but you change the way you do things. And by doing that, we become more of ourselves. It's almost like, imagine as and this is really funny because I was talking about the pregnancy, but as a baby you come as the first pieces of your puzzle, and the more experience you acquire living, because every single experience we have, the ones we name bad, are also pieces of our puzzle. We put it on us. And so imagine this period of transition in my life is a different piece of my puzzle. I am making myself whole. And the beautiful thing is that the puzzle is never really complete. And you know, those puzzles, the other day I saw these puzzles where the pieces are not all, you know, like puzzle pieces, but sometimes they take form, or is a flower, or is a form of a little house, or is a butterfly, you know. And then by making the puzzle you are using the all of these forms. It's like us, every single experience is a piece of our puzzle that we are putting together, you know. And this is so beautiful that we get to do that. And so what I'm saying, a transition sometimes may feel like we are just stopped in time, but we are not. We are integrating those new pieces of ourselves that we are finding out in the unknown, in the void, because that's where everything is. And it is also not about fixing ourselves, but by doing that we are listening even more deeply to us. Because in the beginning of this transitional period I was a lot anxious, because I was like only thinking of what does this represent. But then I started looking slowly, deeply into myself, and what who am I besides what I am, and what I've built until today. Because I am not a finished product. I am a puzzle in constant creation, right? So, being in constant creation mode, as being that, this is another chance of me growing into the next phase of myself, you know, like Super Mario level. I'm just leveling up. And so in this period, I mentioned that there is a lot of confusion, right? So, but confusion is often a sign that our old identities are dissolving, you know, and we are just finding new parts of ourselves. And like I said, also we are triggering certain things that we looked at and took care of in some layers, but healing, and this is also important to understand, healing happens in layers. Because this is the beautiful thing about us as beings and of our nervous system, is that our brain is also prepared to let us go until where we can go. I learned this with hypnotherapy, because when I was going through hypnotherapy a few years ago, I was a bit scared in the beginning, because there are moments where we go a little bit deeper, and obviously every kind of thing we have, of trauma that we have been accumulating in our brains, sometimes when we finally allow us ourselves to feel those emotions that we just shoved down there and then just wanted to shove into oblivion, they will come through and we will feel them in our bodies, right? If we had allowed ourselves back then, we would also have felt the discomfort. And but the thing is that we felt discomfort and we shoved it down. And when I was going through the hypnotherapy, sometimes those things that I had shoved down and tried to put in a box and into the confines of my subconscious, I was feeling obviously in my body. And I remember my therapist saying to me that don't be scared going into this, because your brain, your mind will always give you only until what you can deal with. And In the moment that you reach that limit, okay, this is what we can work with today, your brain will create a barrier there and you won't go further, because this is also the job of our brain, is to protect us, right? The to This is why sometimes we forget certain things, and we put them into the dark sides of our mind. Is the job of our brain, is to try to protect us from something that brought us discomfort or unhappiness, sadness, right? So this I learned doing that therapy. We don't get more than what we can deal with, because this is, we have defense mechanisms of our own. And sometimes these periods of transition, they help us actually going into the next layer that we would otherwise not be able to achieve if we didn't go through these periods. So it's almost like I said, like the pieces of the puzzle. So you find this piece and then you put it into place. And then you look at the bigger picture and the bigger picture becomes different, right? And in the moment that is different, you see, oh, maybe this piece would fit there. And it's the same. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it's the same with this. Mm, we find a different piece, we start placing it together into another part of ourselves, and then another layer. You look at the big picture and you see, oh, so this is what the big picture is now. And when you look at it, something new emerges from all of this. And that is awesome. There's, at the moment, it's confusing and it may bring discomfort, but I I learned this, and I really want to tell you, and I really want to share this. Discomfort is a good thing. And I think this is something we should disconstruct in our mind, because normally we label discomfort as is a bad thing. Oh, the discomfort is bad, and every time I feel it, I have to do something about it. But it's not always that. Discomfort sometimes only means that there's things that we want to deal with, or there is something new in the unknown, and we are discomfortable. We are not comfortable at that moment, but in the moment that we allow ourselves to feel that discomfort, new things will emerge, and things that will allow you to grow into the person that you really are and that you really want to be. And oh, I wrote down that you don't need the full map, just the next grounded step. So you really you really don't. We think that we need to know what is going to happen and what's going to be the end, the end result of everything. But even when we have a vision and we think that the end result is going to be this, the way we live things always changes the end. So we really don't need to have it all figured out. We don't. And I'm learning with also this transition. I don't know who I'm going to be when I become a mother. I don't know. I also, obviously, I have my own vision of it, and I have my own vision of how things are could be, but I am not keeping myself stuck in that, because there is more factors that is going to weigh into this. There is this child, for example, that are going to have their own personality and their own way of living, and that is going to have their own influence in the whole situation, and a lot of other things that hard to. So okay, I think we approached the transition periods, and yeah, I used my pregnancy as an example, but I think that every single moment in our life where we feel like we are going from one moment to the other, where we feel like something is changing and that we are getting into the unknown, may bring all of this. So if you are going through that and you're feeling confused, you're feeling anxious and overwhelmed, and you are feeling like you only have questions and that you are like paused in time and you can't move, or that all the things that you were doing until now that were helping you are not helping you anymore. Now this is the part where I would like to talk about things that we can really do and we can use in order to help ourselves in these moments. And one of the big ones is obviously what I think that if you have watched this until here, you will already have thought about is like the allowance. Allow ourselves to feel the way we feel. Allow ourselves to actually feel the discomfort, feel the anxiety, feel the confusion, and be like, okay, I am confused right now. I am freaking out. I don't know. And allow the questions to come. Allow. This is the first step to allow the moment. Even if there will be those voices in our minds saying like, yeah, but if I am in this moment and if I am confused, I am not going to be able to do anything. Right now, the objective is to understand and bring ourselves to a state where we are more balanced in order to give the next step. Because if we are going to start walking before we can see where we are putting our feet, we're just we don't know where we're going, so we're just going to fall, right? So one of the things going into this is like regulate before evaluate. What I mean with this, like when we are overwhelmed, like pause and decision making. So just like I said, allow, and then stop and think, allow yourself to feel, and then actually use like physical how do you say that? Oh, I'm missing my words, but well, use your body. Place one hand on your chest and one on your belly, and just like slowly exhale and inhale and exhale. Just like try to first bring yourself to a state, or because we feel that anxiety in our bodies, and just first regulate that feeling of anxiety, like maybe do some box breathing. Just inhale for 4, exhale for 6, pause a little, and then you go and you do that box breathing. I don't know if you know what it is, but it really helps. Like what I do normally is I imagine a box, and then I inhale for 4, and then I exhale on the other side, and then I stop, and then I inhale for 4, and I hold it for 4, and then I exhale for 6, and then I go like that. And it really helps because it helps our body first to kind of balance itself back, to go back to a state of calm. Okay. And then when we are like that, because I don't know if you ever notice when you get anxious, your our breath becomes shallow. And if we are not breathing the full length of our lungs, we are not oxygenating our blood. Therefore, we are not oxygenating our brain enough. So how do you want to think clearly if if you don't even allow oxygen to get to your brain? So doing this first, like regulate before the decision making, first regulate your body, and then allow yourself, when you feel your body go, to ask, what does my body need right now? Because one of the most important things when we are going through these things is to actually kind of fall into our own bodies and allow ourselves to get from out of here into the whole. Because most of the times when we stay in our minds, we ignore signs that our bodies are giving to us. For example, that we're going through a lot of stress, or that there will be certain parts of our body that will talk to us when we allow that. For example, you will feel in your chest if there is something that is bothering you. You will feel it in your chest, or you have something to say and you will feel it in your throat. Or like for example, when we stay a lot in our minds and we get that those splitting headaches without any, why do I get the splitting headaches? Because we are constantly in our minds and our bodies are not, or then we sometimes, if we actually fall into our bodies, we get the gut feeling, because we all have that. That's our intuition, right? And then we're like, oh yeah, this is not it, and then suddenly when you feel that, you feel your body and you go back into it and you feel like in your belly, or maybe you feel in your gut, okay, this is okay, and then the discomfort goes a little bit down and you get a clearer mind, and then we get to think. After that, we have the be in the moment, because when we are in transitional periods we tend to be in the future. We tend to not be in the moment where we are, but to be in the next moment. We try to predict what's going to happen, and that brings a lot of stress because we are trying to predict the unknown. We're trying to predict the tomorrow, and we know logically that we can't do that. We can plan for tomorrow, but we can't predict what's going to happen, because we all have experienced this. Like, we plan this vacation and step by step, and then we go in there and we live it and it's totally different. So, we can plan, and planning is good. It helps us sometimes to balance, knowing that we have an idea how things are going to be, but we can't live in that moment. So the secret is to focus on today, on this hour, and ask ourselves, what is the most supportive micro step? What can I do right now? In order to get more clarity, or to get, or to understand better what I'm going through, something like that. Like, for example, rest instead of planning. If you have been planning for a long time, just drink some water, go for a walk, and just, I don't know, just sit with yourself if you feel like it. If you don't, if you think like, okay, I'm going to sit with myself, I'm going to go back into my head, just do something you like to do, something active that you like to do. It can be like for example, go play with your dog, for example, or go walk with your dog, or sometimes it helps me. Sometimes I'm just like in those moments, like, oh my God, oh, am I going to be able to do this? And I just look at my dog. I was like, you know what? Let's go for a walk. And then I go, and I'm not focused on that anymore. I'm just focused on what we are doing. And I noticed that I am more in the moment, in the moment with my dog, walking at that moment. Just sometimes just put some music, and music relaxes the brain, and just dance if you feel like it. If you don't, just take a nap. Something that allows you to just be in the moment, in the today, or in this hour, in this moment, and allows yourself to accept whatever is happening, because this is all we have, is this moment. Right now I'm here, I'm doing this, and I could be here thinking, oh, nobody is going to watch this, blah blah. It doesn't matter. I'm here right now, I'm doing this right now. I'm not going to be doing this maybe in an hour. So what is the point of being stressing about that? Yeah, logically, because right now I'm thinking about this, but I do understand how it feels to be in this periods of transition and just trying to plan for the future. So another thing, I call them tools. I said, name the season you're in. Like, encourage yourself to see this period where you are as, for example, a season. For me, and this really helped me. And when I was in this period of, like, I couldn't really take action, or I was a little bit, like I said, paralyzed by all of these questions, all of this confusion in my mind, I called it like a period of winter. It was almost like I am resting, I am grieving everything that I was until that moment. And then I am accepting that I don't know what's going to happen. I'm accepting what it's happening right now. And I am accepting that this in this period I am supposed to kind of hibernate, do less, slow down, allow my body to understand that we are going into a new period, and allow my body to actually self-regulate a little bit, and give my mind a little bit of rest. It was like, girl, it's okay, you can have you can have your rest right now, you can just chill, and everything is going to be fine. We're going to figure it out. Just not now. We're just hibernating, integrating. And I accepted, when I finally accepted, and I called it winter. It's time to rest, time to hibernate, time to integrate. And then comes clarity, and when does clarity, the curiosity, and you start feeling more curious about whatever is happening, and start to want to explore it a little bit more. So normally I will call it like you start getting into spring, like when starts, you see a little bit of action starting to happen in nature, right? Um some birds start to come back, and they start to look places for nests and all of that. And so it starts a period of curiosity, of exploration, of slowly starting to move. And in this period, for example, is when, for me, I started to look for help, because now I went from, because I respected the period of rest, and now I feel like I can finally accept what's happening and be curious about it. And hey, okay, so now that I gave my body and my mind the time to balance out each other, and to I actually felt what my body was feeling. I started to get curious about it, and then the right questions start to come up. What does this mean to me? And if I'm feeling resistance, because for me I was feeling resistance to do certain things, uh, I was like, let us explore this. Where does it come from? What does it mean? And we start being curious about it. And then it will come a moment where you feel ready, where you feel ready for action to and expression. And that I call that the summer. And then you have the release and the completion, and that would be autumn. It is just about recognizing that we go through cycles and we go through phases, and if we see them as seasons, it helps sometimes to understand and to create, to give ourselves the permission to be where we are. And then another thing very important, even when we are doing this, is, transitions, they steer emotions, so it's good to allow them to be, to practice this. Even I even wrote for myself, how do you say that, a phrase where it's like, I let this feeling move through me without labeling it as good or bad. I just allow that to go, like going back to that being in the moment, being wherever you are. This feeling is coming. It doesn't have to be good, it doesn't have to be bad. Is what you're feeling right now is extremely relevant, very important, but it's just a feeling. The feelings come and they go. And after that, after we give it presence, you'll see it starts kind of dissolving itself, and then it brings clarity. This is another tool. This give your emotions space without needing to label them, without needing to immediately say what they mean and where they come from and what it is. This is just, by doing this, we being in this allowance, being in the moment now, you give your nervous system the rest and the balance. We're bringing ourselves from the survival mode that we're almost conditioned to be in nowadays, into the rest and digest that is so important. This is in the moment where we actually have time to digest everything we have been going through until now in this transitional period, all of the information that's coming in, all of the questions uh, we haven't answered until now. And then the answers start coming, and sometimes if there are not answers, they are more questions, but new ones. curious questions, like instead of those questions of anxiety, more curious questions. And you will feel the difference, because then you will not be anxious about those questions. You will be more actually very interested about this transition. We go from in the transition, we transition from this overwhelmed creature, asking questions without an answer, all those rhetorical questions: who am I, what am I doing, who am I going to become after this, into the question goes like, hmm, who can I become, what can I do of new with all of this that is happening? Oh my God, you start looking at it differently. Oh my God, I can actually, maybe now I can do this and that. Oh, now I could try this new thing, because, everything is new anyway. So why not? And then we start getting curious, and, that curiosity that we just called spring starts coming, and all of these things start flourishing in us. And for example, right now, I am here talking about this because of all this. These things that I'm telling you here are not things that, oh, this is pretty to say. No, these things are tools that I am using and that I'm finding so important right now, and then I'm finding out that they really work. Allowing yourself, being yourself in the moment, and giving things space to exist, and actually giving yourself grace to be in that transitional period with whatever feelings they bring, without, yeah, sometimes we are not able not to label them, because we are still in that overwhelmed period, but without telling yourself, oh, this is bad and this is going to be bad, or this is good and this is going to be good. Just allowing that, and this is beautiful when you actually discover that you are allowed to experience your own feelings, emotions, without them having to mean anything. I think this is one of the most beautiful things, and it brings so much rest to our nervous system, because we are like, oh, I can be overwhelmed today. It's fine. And tomorrow, I'm not going to be like that, maybe. Then tomorrow, you are like, oh, I'm not overwhelmed today. So maybe today I can be more active. And that's it. And that's good. This is what being transition, normally, it's almost like we stop in that moment of overwhelm, and we tell ourselves that this is a transition. It's overwhelming and it's discomfortable, and this is where we have to be. But no, a transition is called a transition because it goes through all of these phases, and it is important for us to allow those phases to happen in order for us to be able to bloom into what we really are. And for me, the thing that I'm discovering is to look into the tomorrow instead of to look into it as a full image of things, like a void of opportunity, like where everything can happen, where everything that I want to happen is over there. And instead of looking like and see only the things that I don't want to happen, because we tend to focus a lot in these transitional periods, we tend to focus a lot on all the things that we don't want to happen. I don't want to become a bad mother, or I don't want to lose my identity, or I don't want to, I don't know, I don't want to go through this and this and that in labor. This is my own experience. For example, I don't want to be a bad professional, or oh, I studied so many years. I don't want to go and to do that job badly, for example. Or sometimes a transition from getting out of a relationship. Oh, I don't want to get myself into another relationship like that. You know, what if we reframe this into looking into all of those possibilities and erasing that, and thinking like everything that's over there can be good. And this is a phrase that I've been repeating to myself, that a friend of mine said to me, and it resonated so much that I've been using this almost every single day. And look at into all of this transitional period, and I said, how good can this all get? Instead of focusing in how in everything that I don't want to happen, I'm trying to focus in everything that I want to happen, that will happen. Just focus on the things that you want to happen. And I am finding out that it really is helpful, because if they happen or not happen, I don't know. But if I focus on something good, I feel better and I feel less overwhelmed. And I see, I start to feel hopeful, and that is so much better than feel a complete wreck every single day, or just feel like, oh, I can't do anything because I am overwhelmed, or because I don't know who I am, or because I don't know who I'm going to be, or because I am so sad right now. Just be sad, because that means that tomorrow you have the chance to be happy. Like for example, when we are getting out of really hard relationships, and it's hard to even if they were really bad for us, there is a grief period, that transition from being in one relationship with someone, whatever that relationship is. It doesn't have to be romantic always. Sometimes being in a relationship with a friend, or even with family members, and sometimes we have to take space, and that transition between the person we were in that relationship and the person we are becoming without that relationship, it can be so overwhelming. It can come full with confusion and questions, and actual dread of, and we tend to focus in all the things that we don't want to repeat, in all the things that we don't want to go through again, and also almost not allow ourselves to be sad and to grieve that relationship. Like, oh, that relationship was bad, I cannot grieve this. Of course you can. You can grieve anything. We just tend to label things to be bad or good, but if you take away the label, it was a learning experience. So if you learn so much from that relationship, you give yourself the space to grieve, to be sad, to be whatever you are at that moment, to be mad if necessary. And then, you know, when you allow that, like we talked about some minutes ago, when we allow those things to be, they kind of lose the importance, because everything we give attention, too much attention to, has too much importance, right? So if you give only attention to bad stuff, to things that you labeled bad, everything is going to be bad. But if we start giving attention to all those things that we label as good, then this is what we are going to start experience. Because my friend, we are creators. We sometimes don't believe it, but we create our reality. And if I look around me and everything that I'm seeing in this room, I label it as being beautiful and being amazing. And oh my God, this pencil is the most beautiful pencil I've ever seen. I'm going to look at this and I'm going to see the most beautiful pencil I've ever seen. But if I say this is the most stupid pencil I've ever seen, it's yellow. It's yellow. I don't even like yellow, for example. You label that way, you're every time you're going to look at the pencil, you're going to feel bad, because you're like, I hate yellow, stupid pencil. It it may look like a very stupid example. I tend to give this kind of examples all the time. I am like this. I like this. I like to give this kind of examples. So get used to me. But it's the truth, right? It's a really simple example. If I label this as bad, every time I'm going to look at it, I'm going to have a bad feeling. But if I decide that this is just a pencil, and I can also look at it and be like, it's just a pencil, it's yellow, and I can write with it, then it's neutral. You are going to feel nothing. Or then you can label it as being something. Oh, it's a beautiful pencil. I can write with this. This is really nice. Every time you're going to look at it, we're like, oh, a nice pencil. This, all of this to say that it's in us to create whatever reality it's around us. And yes, there's things that come from the outside, but the way we deal with the things, it's what creates the reality we live in. So, for example, I would, you know, if in this moment, my advice to myself, and I would if I'm talking about transitions, I would be like, let's be supportive of this identity shift. Let's embrace this. Let's ask ourselves, instead with of anxiety, who am I becoming? Let's ask ourselves, who am I becoming? With curiosity. Hmm, who am I gonna be? Wow, I can do everything right now. I left this and that behind. Or for example, I left this job right now and my life is about to change. Wow, what are the things that can change? What other jobs could I get? Wow, I could choose so many things. And like, look at that in a supportive way, like with with a view of curiosity and almost like this childish wonder, because it's a chance for us. And actually give ourselves the space to really go look into, are there things now that are heavier to carry than before? Because if there are, you can also reframe that. You can it's a time that we have the chance, when we are in transition, to reevaluate a situation and to become more of ourselves, to give ourselves the chance to grow into a different direction, if that's what we need. And also, something very important is like, what are the things, what is that is no longer wants to come to us? Because sometimes in these periods, we start we how should I put this, like, we kind of try to reach for things that we are comfortable with, but maybe they don't work anymore. And that's okay. That only means that we have now a space to create, or to be different, to start different and new things, and with all the excitement and the stress that comes with it. So if you are like me in a transitional period of your life, just know that you're not behind. You are integrating. We are integrating new parts of ourselves, growing. We are reevaluating. Transitions, they are not detours. Just because your life was like this and you now are in a transitional period, doesn't mean that you now are going left or right and that you are detouring from getting to where you want to be with your life. Imagine, for example, I am now in this period of transition in my life, and I'm at the same time I am working towards my purpose, working towards my coaching practice. I'm building something. I'm building my channel. I am building my career, for example. And just because I am now in this transitional period, I was building it until now as an individual who wasn't pregnant, who wasn't going to be a mom. And now I'm building it as a mother, as a person who has, but this doesn't mean that I'm detouring from my goals. I am just It's just a threshold, let's say, and it's just an in between. I can still go where I was going, but now I have the chance to choose different ways of going. And every single transition is an enrichment period in our lives that brings more information, brings a lot more of us. And as I said, by triggering, and I see triggering as a very positive experience, because every time I get triggered, I just kind of get to know myself better. I feel triggered. I feel resistance. I no longer think, oh my God, I want to stop this right now. I'm like, get it on. I think, like, okay, I'm triggered. This is good. What does this mean? Like, what am I about to find out about myself? Because it's me. It's not external. It's about me, my experience, and what I can build from this. And listen, we are allowed to move slowly, because moving slowly towards our goals, it doesn't mean that you are not moving. You're still moving forward, right? We are still moving forward. So it's just a different way of moving, you know? It's for example, imagine you were running for an hour. After an hour you get a bit tired and you run, maybe, how do you call, we in Portuguese we call it trot, you trot for a while instead of running full force. It doesn't mean that you are not running towards your goal, right? You're still running towards the same goal. You're just going slower, but slow is still movement. Going slowly is still going. And then I wanted to say also, looking into my notes again, trust builds through small moments of self honoring. And when I wrote this, I meant that every time that we are respecting ourselves, every time we are allowing our emotions, allowing ourselves to be in the discomfort and giving ourselves the grace to walk the path we are walking, we are building self-trust. And we all know how important trust is, and normally we put that into other people, and we usually even say that if trust is broken, we can never rebuild it or something like that. So imagine, trust in yourself is the most important thing, because every time we build this trust, the next time we are going to be in a period like this, in another transition in our life, we're gonna have built this stronger uh, foundation of trust in ourselves. And we're going to go and we're still going to feel the confusion and the questions, but we are going to also be more trustful that we can go through this and that we can do this. And this is okay. This is not the first time in my life that I went through a change, and I went through it and I did it. And before before I end the stream, I would love to leave you with this question. If you stop right now to think about your life, and if you're in a transitional period right now in something or not, think back in your life and think about other moments of your life. Is this the first time that you're feeling this way? Is this the first time that you're going through change in your life, that you're going through a transitional period, big or small? I bet it isn't. I bet it isn't, because I'm going through this transition period right now. But if I look back into my life, I went through other transitional periods. Some of them were more overwhelming than others, but there were a lot of transitional periods. Even when we go from, for example, we're going from middle school to high school, that is a transitional period. Sometimes we change schools when we go from, for example, I changed schools when I went from, yes, from my middle school to my high school. I changed schools in different there were schools in different cities, and so I had to get used to a whole new environment, a whole new group of people, a different classroom, different teachers. Everything was different, right? So those are transitional periods. And all of those periods of your life, you probably went through them too, and you're here today. If you look back, you did it, didn't you? So right now is the way of dealing with it that it has changed, because we grew from those periods. And I am here to tell you that you're not alone going through this. As you can see, I'm going through it. Probably the next person next to you is going through it. So we are all going through it. The thing that I would like to end this with is, let's not go through this alone. Let's not try to do everything on our own. I think that right now is also a time for us to search for community. And this is very important. For me, this is helping me in a in such a big way. Search for community. Don't think that you have to go through these periods alone. And if you don't feel comfortable being in a community, search for help. Maybe search for a coach, maybe search for therapy. Talk to someone, because it helps immensely to regulate, to have someone on the other side who is just there to listen. Sometimes just listen with curiosity and give us the space to just exist, because being inside of our minds all the time, it's hard. And when we speak out and we say like, oh, you know what, I'm going through something, and I just, even when you say to someone, "Ah, I'm going to something that is difficult to me and I don't want to talk about it," that already helps, because you are talking about it, you are saying something. So don't go through things alone, and find your way of finding community, whatever that means to you. It has helped me a lot looking to that community, and not comparing myself with my community, but looking at it and seeing everybody is going through the same things in different ways, and we can help each other. I think the most beautiful thing that the human race has, that we have been losing, and I think we're kind of regaining, we're starting to get back into it, and I think it's beautiful. It's our capacity to connect with each other and build community. And for a big time, people were all about individuality, and taking individuality out of its initial context, because you can be an individual, and you can be individual and still be in a community, still be with others, and still have a support mechanism, and don't, and not lose yourself. Being in a community doesn't mean that we have to lose our personality. And that is the confusion. I thought that for a lot of years it was like everybody thought they had to be alone, and there were periods in our life in the last years where we were shown that that is not the truth, and being alone is not the best way of going through anything. So community, unity, find something that you like, and look for people that like that too, and just enjoy that community that you can build. And don't go through things alone. Don't go through things alone. Don't think that you are alone going through things, because it's not true. And if you ever need anything, it's just, you know where to find me. So this was really what I wanted to talk about today. This is something that has been near and dear to me, because I'm going through it myself, my own way. And I hope it can help. Just for me, being here talking about this and saying what helped me, and I hope really that it can help other people, and it can give people the feeling, at least, like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one going through all of this and feeling like freaked out and thinking like, oh shit, I'm the only one going through this. So, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so, well, you're not. So I hope that at least, that if nothing more, that someone watches this can feel that I'm not alone, and uh, what I'm feeling is totally valid. And yeah, of course, you can feel whatever you feel at that moment, and that you are. And the what I wanted to do really with this was to create that feeling of a safe space. So I hope that that's what it was. I loved it. It was it was really interesting to be live for the first time. I hope you all are well, and welcome home. Bye.